Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Today's Talks at Google is really happy to present Angela Dorgan. Angela is the head of First Music Contact and also the chairperson for the National Campaign for the Arts. She's a real spearhead in the Irish music industry, so we're so delighted to have her in today. Just a note, put down your laptops and no chit-chat.
Wow.
So we're going to kick it right off. Angela, where did your amazing journey begin?
Hello, and thank you all so much for coming today. I was so nervous that there'd be nobody in the room, so thank you for being interested. My journey began, I think, like anyone else who has a passion in school, before school. I had a really good friend, Philip Kennedy, who was had a really good taste in music. And another friend of ours was a guy called Murty McCarthy, who was the drummer in the Sultans of Ping, and then we used to hang around with Frank Walters as well. So those were all kind of my contemporaries from kind of school into college. And me and my sisters and brothers, there was always music in our house, I guess. We had an old record player. My embarrassing story, and I don't have to say it, but I will, is... Everyone said, like, what's the first record you bought? The first record that was bought for me was a song called Angelo. I don't know if any of you know it. Look it up. It's the most embarrassing first single you could ever tell in a story, but that's the level of honesty we're at today. It's about this sheep herder, Angelo, but everyone in my family loved me enough to sing Angela at the end of it instead of Angelo. So there's my sister there confirming that story. And then I suppose it was just Murty from the Sultans taught me how to play drums. I played drums very badly, and I auditioned for one band who had a very good sense to forgive the drummer I was replacing everything that he had done, including snogging one of the other guy's sisters. And take him back. That's how bad I was of a drummer. So there ended my drumming career. And then I suppose I was doing a master's in UCC. We used to go to a lot of gigs. We used to, me and my sisters used to be involved in hiring buses to come up to Dublin to see the bigger gigs, McGonagall's. And so kind of always had that immersion in music for as far back as I can remember. And then when I went to college... I did a master's in English and sociology, and after college, after finishing my master's, had done a module kind of on statistics and stuff. And Murty from the Sultans used to have a fanzine at the time called No More Plastic Pitches, which was a football fanzine, and we decided to put a questionnaire that I designed because I was so mad about myself. I was like, I'm going to be a statistician, and designed a questionnaire to find out what was it musicians in Cork needed. And out of that, we went to Falls at the time and said we want to design a community employment scheme to resource the musicians in our county. And then that took on its own life. And then I went to the Arts Council and said, look, we need a national version of theirs. So that's kind of the germs of First Music Contact.
Amazing. So did you always know that you wanted to impact the music industry?
Oh, God, no. No, I wanted to be a lecturer. I wanted a really easy job that paid loads of money, like I think everybody who went to college. I did art, so you know your thing was there's no job in that. So I kind of wanted to prove that wrong. I did my master's in development, so I did toy with the idea and actually came to Dublin for an overnight with a charity because I thought I was going to do aid work and work in aid work and look at like societies and new societies and helping rebuild societies that were challenged. So I kind of, in my mind, it was going to be either overseas development, community development in Ireland, or lecture. So that's where all my CVs were focused. That's where all my interviews were focused. That's where all my ideas of who I'd be as a grown-up were kind of focused. And then the music thing was just something to do that my friends needed me to do. But once I got stuck into that, I kind of saw what Ireland could do in this space that it wasn't doing for artists and musicians in particular, but artists in general, to resource them to make work, and for someone to speak on their behalf at local and then national government level.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So following on from that, I'd love to know, why is art important, in your opinion?
Wow, why isn't art important? I suppose my frustration with the people, there's a couple of frustrations for me in the world of arts and talking about arts. There's the conversation that, well, why are we spending that money on the Abbey when there's no hospital beds? And I'm like, the fact that there's plays on in the Abbey, there's screenwriters writing your great TV, there's musicians writing great music, is the reason there aren't more people in hospital. And that's just end of, I think. If you do want to have an economic conversation about the arts generates more income into sectors like theatre, music, gigs, festivals, than is spent on it by government. So I think it's a dead argument on behalf of government, and that's usually where the argument comes from. I suppose art is important for us because art is important to society. A creative base to social life is salve for all of our souls. It's, I often, when I do talks, I challenge people, and I'll give you all the challenge again today, that if any of you can spend any 1 second in the next 24 hours where you don't engage with an art form, I will send you €100. Because even in this room, the graphic design behind us, all of your clothes, the flyer that we've put on your chairs, plug, for Ireland Music Week, there isn't a second in your day where art isn't influencing you, and where art isn't, whether it's the music you put on to when you're stressed and you really need to get, like, I just need to write this paragraph, or I need to write this code. It's music. When you want to relax, it's music you listen to. When you want to be challenged and distracted, you'll read a book, you'll go to theatre, you'll watch a film. So there isn't any moment in your life where art isn't important. And I think where we've lost the connection is that we think art is great, but we forget it's made by artists. And I suppose for me, that's the biggest challenge with my FMC head on and with my NCFA head on, is we need to and I don't know if anybody thought they'd ever have to say this out loud, we need to reassess how artists make a living, because they can't make art for the fun of it, and they shouldn't make art as a hobby, shouldn't be made to make art as a hobby. And if we are benefiting from it on a day-to-day basis, every one of us, I don't mean us as a society, I mean, or government, that's a different conversation to have. But if all of you are enjoying art, then all of you should be paying for the art you enjoy. And that's how artists will make a living and continue to make art. Because I don't think there's anyone in this room who would spend any day of their life without art in it. But someone has to make that. It doesn't, and I know this is the wrong setting to say it, but computers will never achieve what humans can achieve in art. I'm sure you can achieve it. And it's just, I know where I am. I shouldn't be rude to my host, but art, AI, you can feed all the algorithms, and that's, I'm used to those algorithms because that's what they say about drummers. What's the difference between a drum machine and a drummer? You only have to punch the sequence into a drum machine once. So there are ways that AI can help and engage with music and help get it to bigger audiences. And like any application of digital and internet and new discoveries, AI, VI, all of that, they all trial themselves on the music industry, and I'm a Rottweiler about that, about protecting musicians in that. It's like, if one more tech company says exposure to me, I will actually deck them, because you can't buy butter or milk or pay rent with exposure. I have checked. Landlords are generous, but they're not that generous. So I suppose that importance of the art is we can't have the conversation, why is art important, without following that down to why artists are important and why they should get paid.
Amazing. Completely agree. And on that topic, how are artists getting paid these days, in your experience?
Very little, and badly, in some cases. I mean, I suppose here's the thing about the music industry, and if we talk about the moment of the internet being the horse bolting from the stable, So many reactions from the music industry are, oh, we need to get a different lock for the stable, and let's lock the stable really, really tight, so, you know, because the horse broke out of it. And no, very few tech ideas or people or companies got on the horse and went with the horse to protect all the rights, you know, on the horse. So for me, the people who got on the horse weren't the protectors of music, they were the exploiters of music. And if you look at it that way, the music industry was never the fairest place for the musician, because really the music industry is, you make something beautiful and stunning and you open your chest bone and it's authentic, and then it lands on somebody's chest bone and they have an emotional, wonderful reaction to it. The problem is all the people it takes to get from one to the other, and that's where the exploitation happens. And it's funny to me that in every contract in the music industry, exploitation is used as that's the term, that's the legal term, and there isn't even a sense of irony about that it's, you know, so here's how we will exploit you. And, you know, that the feeling that has to a musician is, you know, it's here how we will collaboratively make us both more money. Wasn't as catchy. So I suppose alongside that, the middle class of musicians has grown, and there is now an opportunity in the DIY indie kind of approach. The indie sector is the good news is the indie sector is growing, and the in terms of market share. And the indie sector are, by and large, fairer to their artists. Because I suppose they're not tied to big corporations who also need to make speakers and put out blockbuster movies. But so they're not in that whole kind of, you know, you have to exploit one more to make money for the other to get made, when really everybody should be looking at who are the audience. And by and large, audiences don't want the artists they love to be ripped off, and that's where the indie sector lives, I think, and that's where we kind of concentrate our work, although we also give love to the others. But what we do is we give education and support to the artists, so that when making the decisions on who they're going to be exploited by, they know their rights and they know how to protect those rights, but also they know what's fair and not fair. And hopefully when they grow up to be huge on a label, that they use the influence for other artists as well. But I suppose in terms, the biggest, I think, challenge for music is there's so many musicians trying to make a living, but it is ironically a better place to be now as an artist, because it's easy to get to 2,000 people a year if that's what you want. If you want to just tour in 10 countries and 2,000 people in the capital city of that country and bring out an album every 2 years, that's easy to do if you have that authentic relationship with your audience member. A t-shirt and an album and a ticket to a tour times 5,000 times 10 countries is enough to make a living. And most artists, all artists I know, don't write music to make money. They write music because it's their art and they have to and they're compelled to and they can and they enjoy it. So, you know, when I sit down, I see 7 bands every Thursday, and MC, you've been into a couple of those. And what we will say is, what do you want? And then map that out in terms of the next 5 years. But the first 5 years of that, first 3 years, that's really your job, is to get to 1,000 people. After that, then comes the label. That gets you to 10,000, 100,000 if you're lucky, and we've had a couple of those. But I suppose most artists just want to not do the other job that they have to do in order to put bread on the table. That's always the primary. If I just didn't have to turn up at work and could write music all day, you know, and I know that's true. So I suppose it is easier for more people to make that kind of a living, and there are more artists more musicians making money from their work, but what they're being paid and what they deserve, that gap is still enormous.
Yeah, totally. So talk to us a bit, for people in the room who don't know so much about what you do and the various roles that you play in music. Talk to us a bit about like FMC and National Campaign for the Arts and that kind of stuff.
Okay, so Please put your hands up or nod or fall asleep if you get bored. But so we are First Music Contact are the Arts Council funded resource organisation for popular music. We sit alongside IMC, who resource jazz, Music Network, who resource classical and some trad and folk, and they tour them. And then CMC, who resource composers. So we're kind of everybody else: singer-songwriters, indie, rock, metal, hip-hop, kind of anybody else you can think of in terms of making music. And we resource them we've developed a program of a continuum of care for artists. So we start at information, advice, how to do this, how to do that, how to protect your copyright, how do I get a gig, when do I get a manager, when do I get a label, all the stuff that when artists come into us on a Thursday and they're like, and I don't know this and I don't know this, and we're like, we're checking the rocks. You don't have to. The wheel has been invented. You don't have to. Any time, at any stage of your development, you need to know something or someone. That's why we're there. So first of all, that's the big And we used to have a red couch, so our Thursday sessions are known of, depending on who you're talking to, the bucket of cold water or the red couch session, depending on what stage we need to be real with you at. And so I meet, I suppose, between 500 and 600 artists individually for their planning sessions. Then we do clinics and talks around the country. We do them with arts offices, we do them with colleges, kind of anywhere where musicians gather, street corners mostly. And then our next step, I guess, in bringing the community together is breakingtunes.com, which is our online music portal. There are currently, I think, 15,500 artist profiles on that, and 5,500 of those are live. So on the island of Ireland, there are, I think, 5,400 artists who have a profile on breakingtunes.com, but have either added or taken something off it in the last 4 weeks. So it's an incredibly live number. So on the island, there are 5,500 musicians. Breaking Tunes, is used for, oh my God, like we built it out of pure laziness because it was a way we had bands apply to our festival. And it was a way we could introduce international judges to our festival by putting it all digital. But it is now a gig swapping platform. It's a discovery channel for global industry. So we built a section where industry can sign up. There's about 1,500 global industry members on that, and they can follow an act. They can get a ping anytime an act puts a gig or a track or anything on that. If there are, and I've been told by everyone on my board to say this when I told them I was coming to Code, if there is somebody who would like to donate their coding time, we're looking for someone to develop an Android app for us. Just putting it out there. And we will put you forever on our best friend of FMC list. So there are people who gigs, so you can search by genre, you can search by tag. So when bands are saying, oh, I don't know where to start for gigs, we're kind of going, okay, write down the 25 acts you think you sound like. And then go, if you put that on your tag on your Breaking Tunes profile and click on that, you can find everybody else on that site who also tags them. And then you can steal all their homework, which is what gigs are they playing, what venues are they playing, what festivals are they playing, and that's your year mapped out for you. So you can look at the person right in front of you, 2 steps ahead of you, 3 steps ahead, and follow them all the way to 5 years' time. What festival do you want to be headlining and who's on the bill with you? And that, I think, is really, if you're an artist, and I should have asked this at the start, that's a really good way to start on where do I start, because that takes 80% of who you're worried about you don't know off the table into the bin. You never have to talk to them, because if you're a country artist, there's no point in you talking to Tara Stewart or Louise McSherry. But if you're a pop artist, Dan Haggerty probably has priorities ahead of you. So you're cutting down everyone you have to talk to, putting them in the bin, and then you're, instead of 250, you've 25 people you need to get to know. So it makes it all more manageable and less frightening. So that's Breaking Tunes. That's where Irish artists help each other out the most. They offer each other gigs, they'll, meet each other, they'll chat online. And it's the only part of the website where people can chat is artist to artists. So an industry person, once they signed up, can send you an email from your page, but the only people who can talk live are artists, and that's why we made it. It's also unique and it's not monetized. There isn't also bad thing to say in here, but it's not monetized, and there are no ads on Breaking Tunes, so it's just for musicians and those who want to discover them. The next step then is what was Hard Working Class Heroes and what is now Ireland Music Week, and you all have flyers. I will ask you not to take photos and share the flyer because the live schedule isn't up yet. And Lisa our PR killed us on the way out of the room, on the way out of the office earlier. Please feel free to look at it and go to the website and listen to the bands, but the live schedule isn't actually out until Tuesday. But I convinced her you wouldn't exploit us and share it with anybody because the bands don't have their little posters yet. And Ireland Music Week is now, used to be 3 day, it's a 5-day event. The artists, we get about 600 applications a year. We have 42 judges, 8 Irish and the rest international, who all have big boy and girl jobs in the music industry. They're the heads of festivals. They're we have the booker from South West. We have the publishers from Universal, Sony, Beggars Group, Domino. They're really diverse. We have agents, managers, people whose job it is to pick good acts. They are our judges. And what I love about that is that the 50 you get showcasing in Ireland every year are the 50 best global Irish acts, because they're not picked by, it's not like this is the Irish picked Irish lineup. This is the global picked best 50 acts in Ireland. And then we spend a lot of time, energy, money, and positivity in getting those 50 acts seen by between 50 and 60 of the most important people in the industry in the world, and we bring them all to Dublin over the weekend. So there's 5 days of conference. This year we've, and all along, actually, I should say, is one of our jobs. We're an art, we're a philosophy. Everything we do is free. It's not an economy, it's a philosophy. And the philosophy is the artist, the musician is the most important person in the music industry. It's not called the industry, it's called the music industry. So everything we do, everything we program, every project we do, we put the musician first. And in that context, we took a mental health approach to our conference this year, and for the first time it'll be colour coded, because from personal experience seeing the bands every week, we're aware that too much information freaks someone out as much as lack of information. So we've colour coded the panel. So we're advising, you can go to every panel you want, but we're advising people to go to a panel that's at the level they're at, so they're not freaked out about what they don't know when they're in the panel. And I think that will help in terms of mental health, and mental health is so close to creative health. And then the fourth element, the fourth thing we do in that continuum of care, or their talent pipeline, is Music from Ireland, which is the music export office, where we fund and present the Irish acts selected to showcase at 12 international events. I suppose key to that, again, is we don't get involved in the selection. It's the events themselves. Come to Dublin, to Ireland Music Week, go shopping, pick their favourite acts and bring them to their event the following year. So that's our kind of continuum of care. And with the NCFA then, we just survey all our members every year and work out what's more important to them. And then it's a volunteer group, and we spend a lot of time talking to TDs, talking to political parties, and talking to the minister. We've just put in our pre-budget submission. We're tying the Taoiseach to his promise to double arts funding in 5 years. We're in year 2. It's about 14% up. So, in with respect to the government, they've done an amazing job of increasing funding. We're only about a third of the way there. So that's, I suppose, in terms of the NCFA, that's what we do. We work with government to help them, to tell them what the sector are thinking and feeling. And it's been pretty effective so far, I think.
Fantastic. So you mentioned mental health amongst musicians, and there are so many musicians in the world who do struggle with mental health issues. New surveys are coming out all the time, and the results are shocking. Why the music industry? Why do you think it's affected so much?
I have absolutely no qualification to assess that clinically, but experience-wise, if you're opening your chest bone and being your most authentic and your most vulnerable on a daily basis to make a living out of it, that's one. You're exposing you're getting out there, and you're and usually that's a compulsion It's something you have to do. It's not like, oh, I might try and write a song, see what happens. It's like it's in you and it has to get out. So you're vulnerable, and you know, I always say to musicians, I've never, you know, I don't write songs for a living. So there's a pride in being in that top percentage of the population who can make art. And there should be a pride that comes along with it. But if you're in a situation that you're opening that chest bone, and the industry, I mean, it is, Hunter S. Thompson was right, it is a cruel and shallow money pit. And then there's us. But, you know, for the most part, it's a cruel and shallow money pit full of people who want to just make money from you. And when they don't, they will cast you aside. So there's that. So that makes you vulnerable. And I think also there's a huge vulnerability in the middle of that. You make music, first people you kind of tell are your friends and family, and of course they love you and they'll say you're amazing. But then that first 100 people, you know, you have to face and make a connection with the first 100 people who aren't related to you, and you know, who are parting with cash for your art. That's a huge vulnerability. So there are more stages of vulnerability more often than typically, I think. Again, not a clinical, you know, assessment, but there are more opportunities for you to feel, I suppose, nervous and not sure about. And add on to that then that most of the industry is you reaching out to people and never hearing anything back. Because weirdly, the people who work in the music industry, and it's, you know, they're also humans, but, you know, agents, all of that, A, they get a ton of people coming at them at one time, but B, they don't want to be that guy or girl who said no to a hosier or a coda-line early on and be cut out. So they're so nice that they don't want to be that, so they won't get back to you at all. And I suppose our job then, and that's why, you know, I'm affectionately known as a bucket of cold water, is our job is to say, well, maybe they're not coming back to you because they're not interested. But that's okay. That doesn't, and I think one of the main things for a musician to know is this is your creative ability. You've now decided to explore the commercial potential of that. That doesn't define that. That's defined on its own. You can make music. No amount of sales of it or otherwise will ever unmake the music you've made. So that's the beauty you're able to create. And then I suppose we're just a little bit of reality about what's the commercial potential of that. And that's a scalable story. So I think that's the approach we're taking to minding the mental health of musicians, is to have a conversation early on with the artist about what is it they want, what does success look like? Because when you take someone else's idea of success and put it onto your music, you're going to be disappointed. And I think, so that's a very long-winded way of saying it's high in, because musicians, what they do for a living is express their vulnerability. And the second is there are more times when that vulnerability is exposed to, you know, and then you take in length of time on top of that. And that's challenging. It's challenging to work with. And it's challenging if there's not someone like us to repeatedly say, but that doesn't define that. That lives on its own. But, you know, then some people will tie their success or otherwise to how much money they could make out of it. And for our mind, we're trying to teach people that that's not the only yardstick, I guess.
So for anyone listening or watching or who's in the room and is based in Ireland and is a musician, get involved in FMC. Super. Okay, so I want to ask you about something else. When we spoke on the phone the other day, you mentioned to me that you, for the first time, achieved a 50-50 split in male and female artists at Ireland Music Week.
We did 2 years ago.
Oh, super.
Yeah, so we've hit that balance, but we've joined for the first time in a global initiative called Key Change, which is driving for a gender balance in all major festivals for 2025. So this year we did hit 50-50, and then one of the artists couldn't make it, so we're actually at 40-60 I don't want to tell any fibs. And I can feel Suzette looking at me going, it's not. I think it's 42. But what we do have control over is who speaks at our conference, and that's 50-50, and we've always strived for that, which is hard to do in the music industry. It's not full of amazing women. It's beginning to have more women in it, but it's quite a male-dominated industry. But gender balance is really important to us, as is diversity, and whether that's cultural or geographical. I'm a culture. It's very important to me that, that not everything we do is about Dublin. In fact, maybe the other way. And but I suppose, obviously everyone could tell I'm from Cork, right? I've said it about 3 times. But I suppose for gender, it's really important because we're the showcase, here's the new talent that's being picked by a global judging panel. So that's our way to say to the people who do book all the major festivals in Ireland, we can just absolutely nix we can't find the talent. We're like, well, that's BS, because here they are. And are you saying you know more than the guy who booked South by because he programmed half of them? So we're kind of, in a friendly way, putting it up to people who book festivals that here's your annual look at what's bubbling under. Get them into your tents, on your stage. Get them early if they're not proven yet, they will get in with them and support them. And I also won't buy the other part of that argument, which is, I'd hate to be a woman who's playing just because she's a woman. The best 50 acts who have the best set of songs play Ireland Music Week. So also we're killing that argument before it starts. It's not this kind of, we're not pushing more women because we don't give our judges any gender instructions. We just say, can you mark all of the bands on these 5 categories, and the top marked bands get in. So when
it comes to those kind of reactions that you get, how do you deal with them? Because they kill a meaningful conversation straight away. I think most people are reasonable. I suppose in our favour too is that we are a philosophy. Our job is to help people, and as our artists develop and we use government funds to bolster them up, like we're funded by the Arts Council, Music from Ireland is funded by Culture Ireland. So there are bands who end up going to South by who will have a big Irish agent and might be signed to the UK office of a large Irish-based label. So they know enough that we're just in it for the good of. I suppose there's that, and then there's respect, and then there's a healthy fear of being called out in Ireland, and I think our press are good for that. There was a website that used to produce, when the posters for large events here came out, would produce a poster without the men on it, and there's like 6. And that's a disgrace. We're well beyond that. And also you as audiences won't stand for it anymore. And that's what's changing it most of all, is audiences just won't stand for it. They won't buy tickets when there's no diversity on the lineup. And I think that's the other one of our jobs, is every single musician we talk to is an audience member and a ticket buyer. And if you can get musicians to help each other and support each other in these initiatives, then everyone has a friend. It's the way people talk about the arts is like all the artists in Ireland are out in like a village on their own, and they're not like in hospital queues. It's this. These musicians are all your friends. Half of them. There's musician works at Google who has 1 million listens on Spotify that none of you will know. And there's many musicians work here. So they're not musicians and all they do is be musicians. They're musicians with other jobs and I think just society now, and I love it, society will not stand for that level of, well, that's BS, because I know that there are all of these amazing female artists. Why aren't you booking them? And that's what will happen. We won't need to stop or start conversations. It'll be audience members, ticket buyers who will dictate that. Fantastic. I think. So we're going to go to audience questions in about 2 minutes. So everybody think of your questions in advance.
Make them be kind.
But I've got one last question for you while we wait. Where can us music fans go to discover the best in new talent from Ireland?
Breakingtunes.com. Ireland Music Week, obviously. you all have to go. We might have news at the end about that, do we, Caroline? There may be something for everyone in the audience. But Ireland Music Week is good. Support Irish festivals with Irish lineups. Don't go, but be, there are a lot there's a lot of music on every weekend that'll cost you less than a tenner. Go to Workman's, go to Grand Social, go to Lost Lane, go, find the gigs in your area and go to them. Musicians, a lot of the time, will be out of pocket for their own gigs. If you don't turn up and go, they won't make money. And if they can't make money, they can't make a living. So if you all in this room promise yourselves to go to twice as many gigs as you're already going to, that will help artists make a living. And, I think if I was working here, I would start a group and buy tickets between you, pool some money, buy tickets and have, 5 or 6 people turn up to gigs every weekend and shout about it. And if you have any social media, amplify it and hashtag it FMC if you like, and we'll re-amplify it. I think just discover it. The listings are there. You really have no excuse because these artists are there for you to discover. And we've done most of the work for you. So just go to gigs, buy some T-shirts and listen to Spotify and we have, Made in Ireland every Friday, Suzette. Can I just point out that Suzette and I said I wouldn't say this, but Suzette and Jen came into work this morning dressed exactly the same and we're mortified for them.
Everybody look at them.
So we did a photo in the office where they look like my special branch people. We dressed as cool industry people. But Suzette makes, we have a Spotify playlist called Made in Ireland. We'd love if you followed it and it's the best. And it's got the best bragging rights. Like you literally... Nobody else will know that these bands are even out there before we put them on our Spotify playlist. So it's an awesome bragging rights Spotify playlist. So do come and follow it.
It's amazing. I follow it already. Kudos, Suzette. I didn't know that was you.
It is. That's great.
Okay, we're going to switch to audience questions. Who's up first? Oh, we have one in the back. Cool.
Don't be fooled by the accent. 19 years in Ireland. Healthy, wonderful music scene. Question for you. It's 2 kind of questions, I suppose. Are you concerned with the apparent sort of loss of small to medium-sized venues as apartment blocks are going up in the city? Mm-hmm. Sort of seeing that as a platform for many musicians to sort of showcase their work. Another thing, and I'm not entirely aware whether this is a factor or not, but like nighttime mayor of Dublin, Cork, like Limerick, places like that. What's your sort of stance on that with the fact that arts very much has an association with like the nighttime element and there's possibly things we could do in that regard to help kind of drive the economy a little bit further?
So yes, I'm aware of both of those. I begged the group that met together not to call it a nightmare because it invites all the obvious criticisms. I thought a night czar might have been better or something Oscoilga might have worked. So we're very involved in a support level with there's a couple of initiatives there. We are working to pilot an initiative called Venue Week, which is very healthy in the UK and is just launched in the US, where we will bring attention to what venues do and what they support. I suppose for us the challenge is how am I very careful around this? There's a lot that venues getting a late license will benefit from in terms of income. Our paws are all over it because we want to make sure that income is spent on artists. So there's some bad practices in some venues, not all venues. All of the music venues I mentioned and that we use are amazing to artists and incredibly supportive. My challenge would be get those fuller more often first. The second then would be in conversations, and we're involved thankfully in the conversations about the nightmare and the culture at night. So I'm not sure how much I can say about it, but we're in talks with one of the departments around FMC being a partner to measure what venues do, because one of the ideas I had was when we were all brought together in a think tank was that there are venues that don't have music, maybe programmed Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and there are theatre companies and dance groups without homes. So I think if there could be a way to subsidise venues to be dry and available to other arts output, that we would be better able to meet the challenge that, we have a panel, you'll see in our brochure called Are We Demolishing Dublin? That could have Cork, Limerick, are we, because what we're doing is we're demolishing sites where creativity happens, where art is made, to build hotels, and what we're telling people to come to Ireland for is to see the art. Like seriously, and it's the please someone joined hand in the thinkings. So we're involved in both of those, and I suppose where we're coming from is if there's going to be a night economy and a night art, that artists are paid fairly. And I am a broken record, and I'm sure dreaded in meetings by many politicians, because my question will always be, how will you pay the artist? And there's for and against. There will be people coming out for and against nighttime economies. I think it's how we manage it. And I think we're best positioned to be creative in that, because per head of capita, we do have more creatives. That's just a fact. We do have more people who engage in art, who participate in art, who make art, who are audience member for art. I think more than any other, certainly European country, and probably most states in other large countries. So I think it's about how you approach it. But there are some very interesting conversations happening at the minute. Unfortunately, one of them was calling it the nightmare. But. So
we have another question in the back over there.
Yeah. Hello.
Sorry for having my back to you for the whole time.
No worries. And I apologize for the quite basic question, perhaps a lack of research, but I'm hoping that there's others in the room that could also benefit from this question. For somebody that's coming from outside Ireland that would like to join the Irish music scene, contribute to it, what's the best way for somebody to get started?
Make music and put a track up on Breaking Tunes. So what we consider Irish is really broad. If you live here, you're Irish. So if you live here, you qualify for any of the activities we do. So you can put up a Breaking Tunes profile. The only thing you can't put on Breaking Tunes is a cover of someone else's music or samples you haven't cleared. But that's clear as you go in. To apply for Ireland Music Week, you can be Irish living abroad, or you can be non-Irish living in Ireland. Have at it. And also for our international stuff, if you're a resident here and you get selected for South by Southwest, we'll fund you the same as we will anybody else. I saw a couple of smiles in answer, so yes, other people did want to ask that.
You talked a little bit about the impact of the internet earlier, and I think for about the past 25 years, music has probably been maybe the industry that has been most impacted by the arrival of the internet. So I know there are some negatives out there, but I wanted to ask what you thought were the biggest net positives that have been delivered by the internet for artists and the industry generally in Ireland.
Loads. Access, education, support. Most people find support in each other. Forums, blogs. It's been the key reason why music has been able to democratize. In terms of more people can make or have the chance to make a living. You're not restricted to the audiences in your own town or country anymore. It's made the music industry and participating in it more equal, because you need less money at an earlier stage to invest in your music. And at the production level, it's just in terms of education, it's been phenomenal, that someone can record, how did you get this piece of gear to work, and how do you put this effect on that? There isn't anything someone hasn't made a YouTube video of now. So it's so amazingly democratic, but also democratic in terms of class and affordability. I think there was a conversation about 20 years ago, when I was very young. There was a conversation about 20 years ago about the danger of all bands being middle and upper class, because they're the people who could afford it. That's thankfully not the situation anymore, because education, learning, teaching, and it's peer-to-peer now. So it's not preachy and you're afraid to ask it. So there is now, you can get a YouTube and how did you make that happen? And you can get on that and say, I still don't understand it. And you can then have a relationship with the person who made the video. It's just brilliant in terms of the positives. And actually just the biggest negative is the exploitative nature of people using music and not using music on the internet, making money from using that music, but not paying the artist. And I think we're veering on political chat there. No heckling.
I promise now. As an artist, what would you like to see us do more? So, of course, there's things that the consumers can do, that the government can do, but what can we do to contribute better and improve things?
If you were one of my 50 acts playing Ireland Music Week, I would very facetiously say read your emails. It's so funny when you're working with artists and you'd say this is this and this and this, and then the next email back to you is what's that? And I'm like, it's in the email. So that's the facetious answer. The real answer, I suppose, is know what you want. Don't worry. That would be my first answer. Don't worry. We're doing the job that needs to be done to teach you how to get through the music industry. That's our job. So it upsets me when I see artists either with bad habits and they've laid all their assumptions on those bad habits, that a cousin of a sister told them this, and that you have to do this in order to get played on this. I would very, very plainly say write amazing music, because there's support out there for you once you've done that. But also know what you want. Know what success looks like. And the other thing that musicians don't do enough, I think, is celebrate those small successes when they come along. Take the time to pat yourself on the back, because you're doing something, and I'll repeat it ad nauseum, you're doing something that 95% of the population can't, not doesn't or won't, can't do. And that to me is phenomenal. And without you, the rest of us would be like just computers. Again, I'm not anti-computers, I promise. But do you know what I mean? I think have confidence in yourself. And I want, if I had a parallel life where I was a mad scientist physicist, I would invent this mad shower that like washed all artists of their preconceived notions of and their bad habits. And that somehow they would, walk through a kind of Star Trek shower, and all your like insecurities would be washed off, and you come in and go, this is what I'd like, and this is what I'd like, and speak up for yourself. And I think in the absence or until artists are doing that, we're the voice for that on your behalf. But, don't worry and write good songs would be the top two things I would say.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Can we get a good round of applause for Angela?
Thanks for having me.